John Weaver. Hello.
Okay.
How's that? Good. Very busy. Doing great.
Keep talking.
Yes, I live about a whole 10 minutes away from here, so. Oh my goodness. I had a soy riso and egg burrito.
Let's go to Supervisor Ward.
Testing 1, 2. What would you like to talk about? Anything in particular?
What did you have for breakfast?
Actually, I had my Metafast this morning.
Ron, we were good there, and then Tom.
I had some berries and yogurt.
All right.
And it was a nice drive here with the rain.
Yeah.
All right. So Dawn, are we good with our recording? All right, we're ready to go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joe Moore. I am the Director of Program Content and the Interim President of Valley Public Radio, and welcome you all today to our broadcast center for this event in our series Be Public Live. We started this series last year and it features community forums about different issues that we've been reporting on. And this year is our 40th anniversary here at Valley Public Radio. And as part of that 40th anniversary, all of our forums in this series will be looking ahead this year. In the summer, we're going to do an event about the future of the arts in the Valley as organizations change, as our community changes, how will organizations adapt, and what are some new opportunities there. And then we'll do another one in the fall. So we hope you make it out to those as well. And this will be available on our website, and we will use excerpts from this in our broadcasts and inform our reporting that's going to be coming up on this issue. Remember, your support is what makes public radio possible, and we really appreciate all of you being here today. Encourage you to check out our website and download our mobile app and find all the different ways you can listen to Valley Public Radio. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our intrepid reporter here, our award-winning reporter, Carrie Klein. She just won a big award for her health reporting on the doctor shortage. So congratulations to Carrie from the Association of Healthcare Journalists. And on behalf of Valley Public Radio, here we go. Thank you, Carrie.
All right, thank you, Joe. And so I'm just going to do another little brief kind of introduction of the topic here. So I'm Carrie Klein, health reporter here at Valley Public Radio. And of course here tonight we're here to talk about air quality. And so that's because while air pollution levels have generally dropped in the region, dropped quite significantly over the last couple of decades, 4 urban areas here in the Valley still consistently rank amongst the top 10 most polluted cities in the country. We just had a pretty bad air quality winter, a pretty bad winter in terms of air quality compared to a couple of winters past. And by way of background, 2 pollutants we'll talk most about are particulate matter, or PM2.5, emitted by burning and combustion. It's a wintertime problem in the Valley, and ozone, which is created by chemical reactions between other pollutants. Most likely most of you know that, but I figured I'd kind of bring us all up to speed a little bit. We're going to be talking about those. And according to the World Health Organization, air pollution is correlated with lung cancer, respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, stroke. So it's a really big deal here. It has a lot of health impacts and ramifications. So the 3 panelists sitting in front of you here are all here because they're working in some way to address air pollution in the Valley and reduce its impact on the health and the economy. So let me introduce Dolores Barajas Weller. She's the director of the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. We have Stephen Worthley, Tulare County Supervisor, and the Vice Chair of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District's Governing Board. And we have Tom Knox, Executive Director of Valley Clean Air Now. So thank you all for coming here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we'll get started. I'll kind of relinquish the floor here to them. So to begin, I would like each of you to share how you observe air quality, how you interact with air quality and air pollution, and kind of how it factors into what you do. So let's start off with Dolores.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So in my professional life, I have the privilege of leading a coalition of organizations, 70-plus members throughout the Valley and state that are committed to working on air quality policy in the San Joaquin Valley. And I work to coalesce the priorities of those organizations in order to effectively strengthen air quality policy at the local, state, and federal level, engaging with agencies like the district, CARB, the Air Resources Board, EPA, and all of our elected officials, business representatives, and community representatives. So that's how I am involved directly with air quality, and I've been with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition for about 8 years now. And personally, I have two small children here that go to school in Clovis, and I'm extremely concerned about their health. And so that's really what sparked my interest in this work that is challenging but really critical for the San Joaquin Valley.
Hi, I'm Steve Worthley. I'm Vice Chairman of the board. I've served on the board, I think, in the longest serving member. This is my 14th year. As a representative of Tulare County, I've been a supervisor. This is my 20th and final year. And I guess my engagement with air quality began more on the stakeholder side at one point in time when I worked in the timber industry as legal counsel. And the very first day on the job was involved a major violation of a biomass plant that we had in Dinuba. And so I've always had an interest in that, and when I had the opportunity to serve as a county representative, I went on the board. And I think it's one of the most meaningful things that I do as a supervisor. We have a lot of different hats. People think we just meet Tuesday mornings in Visalia or at our county seats, but we serve in various different capacities. And for me, my most important, I think, responsibility has to do with the Air District. I've been chair 2 different times of the board, and I really appreciate what's been happening in the board and seeing the improvements that we're making, not only to air quality, but the process that we go through of working with our stakeholders and the public to clean up our air, but at the same time maintain a level of economic activity that keeps the rest of us employed. So it's been a great experience, and I look forward to this evening. Thank you.
I'm Tom Knox. I'm with Valley Clean Air Now. It's a 501c3 that's dedicated to finding maybe overlooked solutions to air quality in the valley, seeing what's out there that could be solved. We try to experiment and come up with things that are good, quantifiable steps forward for valley air quality. We especially try and focus on disadvantaged communities and the kind of overlooked populations out there. We've been around since 2001. Since about 2008, our main program has been called Tune In and Tune Up, where we kept on hearing about the major overlooked problem in the San Joaquin Valley is we've got a larger per capita fleet of older vehicles than any other part of the country. These vehicles, their smog system fails at about 175,000 miles. That's the point at which people who drive those older cars usually can't afford the repairs to keep the cars registered. We provide a free voucher for smog work thanks to the Valley Air District. And so we have fine-tuned this program over the years. Starting in 2012, the district has sponsored the program, and we do between 18 and 22 events per year throughout the valley. So it's a really great way of seeing really tangible progress in the places that need it most. And we've been gathering data showing that this is a huge overlooked problem, that if those old vehicles could be repaired and or scrapped, it could be the single largest improvement in air quality possible short-term in the valley. So it's been a lot of fun.
Great. Well, so before we really zero in on specific things happening here in the valley, I wanted to start with some bigger forces that will likely have an impact on valley air. So the first is regulation coming out of the state capitol regarding climate change and greenhouse gases. So recent laws aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions significantly in coming decades. California also just renewed its cap and trade program last year, considered to be one of the more aggressive cap and trade programs internationally, and it's helping direct tens of $1 billion back into the valley. for community development projects. So Supervisor Worthley, let's start with you. You know, what kind of synergy do you see between those statewide programs and, you know, the impacts locally with our air quality?
Well, it's important to note that the Air District's actual jurisdiction and authority is over stationary sources only, and 85% of our air quality problems are mobile sources. So we have been able to garner a significant amount of money from cap and trade and other state programs that allows us to go out and invest these dollars in mobile sources. So this year we're anticipating about $350 million actually being available to us, and the district has a tremendous track record of taking money in and getting it right back out into the economy. This also represents probably about 50% of the investment. So people who would take advantage of this, whether they're replacing an old tractor or they're replacing a heavy diesel truck, would have to be responsible for normally coming up with the other 50%. So if you take $350 million, it's a $700 million investment in our air quality. And again, these are things where we don't have jurisdictional authority, but we're very happy to work towards this solution of getting this air quality improved. The more that we can improve the air quality from mobile sources, the faster we're going to get to the level we need to get to.
Yeah, and I just wanted to maybe clarify that point a bit in terms of NOx emissions of mobile sources. It's actually about 50% of our problem, and 85% you're referring to NOx specifically. So I just wanted to make that clear. But in terms of climate programs and the cap and trade program specifically, you know, we see that as very important work, and we realize it's a global issue, but we want to make sure that those programs don't distract from our local air quality problem. And we know some programs, we are concerned that there are some indirect impacts to air quality. For example, from dairy digesters, there's been some research out there indicating there may be some increase in some of the precursors to particulate matter. So that is a concern. There are some really great opportunities as well through the climate efforts in terms of funding, as Supervisor Worthley mentioned. You know, through the greenhouse gas reduction funds, for example, with the Healthy Soils program, we have been really encouraging the local air district to streamline some of those resources with federal funding to really incentivize some of the more sustainable practices for growers here in the valley that would help us with our air pollution problems that we see from agriculture in terms of ag burning, and being able to support those sustainable practices like grinding and reincorporating ag waste rather than open burning or using biomass incineration, which we know biomass plants are located in unincorporated communities that are typically overburdened. So we do see those opportunities within the climate efforts. A lot of funding that I think we see being taken up by other parts of the state, and so I think we can all agree that we want to see a lot of the funding come to the valley where it's needed, and so we all need to work together to make sure, you know, local municipalities and agencies are all taking advantage of those funds.
Well, and a lot of that legislation coming out of Sacramento will affect point sources and not just mobile sources, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, well then, do you want to comment on that, Tom?
Well, sure. You know, in my opinion, I think the Valley is doing as good of a job or better than any other part of the state in making really quick progress with cap and trade funds. There's been so much cooperation over the last 10 plus years on air quality. There's a lot of programs out there that were poised to start to spend those dollars early. Things like the Calavans Ag Worker Van Pool program. They had done an amazing job in building the program to the point where they were ready to receive state funds earlier than any other part of the state. I think the Valley's been more competitive due to all the cooperation that's happened, and that the district receives a lot of the credit for having encouraged kind of a larger network of these types of programs at the local level, which can serve as a global model for how to get this stuff down to the community level.
Well, then that leads into my next question, which is about electric vehicles and renewable energy. And so here in California, we're aiming for half of our electricity sales to be from renewables by 2030, and Governor Brown has called for 5 million electric vehicles by 2030. And so, Tom, I do know that you're involved in, as you said, the Tune In, Tune Up program, lots of programs with the Air District to replace and tune up old vehicles. You know, what are you expecting as California's vehicle fleet changes?
Well, it's a great example of a smog program that we had developed, ended up becoming a great vehicle to get these advanced technology vehicle incentives out to low-income communities. In 2014, we were able to work with the Air Resources Board and the district to pilot a program to find the oldest and dirtiest cars that we were seeing at our events and get these folks into used hybrids and electric vehicles with up to a $9,500 incentive. So that's worked great. It's something that people thought was going to be very challenging, and it is. But we've seen that our customers really love the idea that these vehicles are incredibly efficient. They're saving money on gasoline, and they know that the lower emissions is going to help their neighborhoods. So in terms of the broader challenge of widespread EV adoption in the Valley, this is a big place, a lot of wide open space, not a lot of EV charging stations out there, but there's some great work being done in this. I think the Valley is poised to stay on pace with the urban areas in terms of how to adopt these new electric vehicles in a way that really fits the Valley.
And so does anyone else want to comment on that before we move on?
I just want to agree that, yes, we need to do more to do further outreach in especially our disadvantaged communities to overcome some of those barriers in terms of just creating awareness about electric vehicles, but also addressing the infrastructure needs and having conversations with community about the rebate programs and working with agencies to streamline all of those processes in terms of financing, higher incentives for lower income and disadvantaged communities, and really hearing from community what are those particular barriers that prevent them from accessing electric vehicles.
Well, one thing I was going to say, the recent legislation that was just passed also will require us, as a condition of receiving a significant amount of funds, is to invest those dollars back in disadvantaged communities. So that'll be a real opportunity to do what Dolores was talking about, of reaching out more. We've really depended upon Tom's operation in many cases to provide that sort of outreach. But I think that now that we will have funding which is designated for disadvantaged communities, it will give us a great opportunity to do a lot more outreach into those communities for that purpose.
And then in terms of air quality, I mean, just having that many more electric vehicles on the roads should also just have a general impact here locally, right? Or will that be felt in other parts of the state more so?
Well, certainly the more electric vehicles we have on the road, the better that is. But we also have we have to think about the fact that, as was mentioned, that in our industries here, we need large trucks to take a lot of our product to market. And of course, a lot of our air pollution comes from pass-through traffic, which comes down the 99, comes down the I-5 corridors, rail traffic. And so we have to also look at other types of ways of dealing with air quality. Natural gas vehicles, that exist today, the technology is there to be able to use these on large trucks. The Tier 4 diesel engines are very clean engines. And so I think we're going to be with those types of fuel engines especially for heavy truck traffic for many, many years. But it doesn't mean we won't expect to have great air quality improvements, because the new technology is so much cleaner than the old.
And so then let's talk a little bit more about what's happening locally. And so as we've covered, mobile sources are a large share of the air pollution here, particularly when it comes to nitrogen oxides. They're a much lower share when it comes to particulate matter. There are lots of other issues there. Farming operations are the largest single source of that. There's also a lot of energy generation, biomass, incineration, and a lot of these other sources. And of course, as we move on into the future, climate is going to be changing. Drought is more likely to happen. We're fouling fields across the valley. Wildfires are getting bigger and more severe. So how do you see the pollution makeup kind of changing over the next couple of decades, environmentally when it comes to sort of these natural causes?
Well, in terms of, we're projecting, future drought in our region. I think that we need to plan for those periods of drought. And just as we, develop policies for our regional state implementation plans, we know that we live in a bowl. We are surrounded by mountains. Our policies should address those characteristics and our climate, and so we should be planning for the drought ahead of us. And that just means we need to have more stringent policies for our region.
Well, if I might address that somewhat, because if you think about having had the millennial drought that we had, the last, notwithstanding last year's great year, but prior to that, we have 129 million dead trees in California. And the epicenter of that really is Tulare County, Fresno County. Even this last year, after the great winter we had almost 5 million additional trees die. So we need to be looking at that. I mean, you talk about the makeup. From an air quality standpoint, there's probably nothing more devastating than a wildfire, especially with PM10 and PM2.5. And when we talk about it, sometimes we say, well, that's the equivalent of so many 100,000 vehicles. We're talking about the vehicle's emissions in the course of a year. But it's all happening sometimes in the course of just a few days or a few weeks. And so I think we need to have more active management on our forests if we're going to actually deal with this, because we have a lot of dead trees up there, and the wildfires that could come from that are going to be very devastating to our air quality. That's not something which we govern as far as a governing board, but it's something we need to be engaged in as a society and as a governing board and as a community.
And Supervisor Worthley, you pointed out that that's not necessarily within the board's jurisdiction, so I think looking ahead, we do need to focus on what we do have control over. For PM2.5 in particular, we know that most of the particulate matter comes from our region, and so, it's very timely. We're working on a PM2.5 plan with the district at the moment, and so this is the opportunity to start looking at what are the sources, across the board, what are our sources of PM2.5 that are homegrown that we do have control over, and plan ahead for those for the next 10 to 20 years, and what can we do in the immediate future.
And when you talk about forest management, I mean, so wildfires are outside the jurisdiction, are outside of the control of many of local agencies, but a lot of those trees then go and are transported to biomass incinerators, which do contribute a lot to our air pollution.
Well, if I could speak to that just quickly, there's just a tiny fraction that's actually true. First off, most of our biomass plants no longer exist. The number that used to be in the San Joaquin Valley has shrunk. There's very few left. And the idea that had been that they were hoping to get more of those dead trees down for that purpose, it's much cleaner that way to burn than obviously than in a wildfire. But there is one thing we do have control over as an air district, and those are control burns. So every year we have the Forest Service and the Park Service and people who are in the forest that are engaging in controlled burns. That is under our jurisdiction.
And to add to that, what we also do have control over is how we deal with the ag waste that we're open burning now, because as Supervisor Worthley mentioned, that the biomass industry was dwindling, and now we do have the few biomass industries that do exist are located in unincorporated disadvantaged communities that are already heavily burdened by air pollution. Rio Bravo in Fresno is actually the largest point source of PM2.5 in Fresno County, right next to a neighborhood and a block from a school. So really, major public health issue. And some of the solutions that we were talking about earlier in terms of climate also have air quality benefits in terms of, we should not be rolling back on open burning in agriculture, and we could be encouraging more sustainable practices even for small to medium-sized growers, because I know scale is an issue. So we could be streamlining those funds from the state and from federal government to support those more sustainable practices to reduce our reliance on biomass and not have to permit open burning as we have been seeing in the last 2 years.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Air District's PM2.5 management plan. And so this is the plan that the Air District is putting together to help the region attain EPA standards for PM2.5. So we're still in the midst of developing this PM2.5 plan right now. It includes strategies for many emission sources. It has a couple for particular, including reducing fugitive dust, which is a major source of PM2.5. Also introduces the possibility, as Dolores said, of rolling back restrictions on agricultural burning. So tell me what is informing the new 2.5 plan that we have coming up, and how do we see changes in, again, drought, in wildfires, and all of this in informing this plan?
I think it's important to note that this is the one of a series of plans, right? So we're dealing with initially with PM10, now we have 2.5, and this is I think the third iteration of the 2.5 plan. we have seen continued improvement of our reductions every year, and we continue to expect that to happen even with existing rules that we have in place now. But again, one of the difficulties with a plan like this is that under ozone, you're allowed to have a black box which says we don't really know how we're going to achieve something, but we expect that in the future there may be some additional technological advances or something so forth that it gives us a chance to plug those numbers into a box. With PM 2.5, there is no such box, so you have to show the ability to comply. That's been the difficulty for the Air District, is that trying to meet the newest standards are, I think it's 15 micrograms per cubic meter rather. That is such a low level that